about class the difference between an IV versus an extravascular plasma drug concentration time profile. Okay? So as you all remember, class, you did plotting na, right? If I remember correctly, you were able to do plottings na in your physical pharmacy. Okay? When we do plottings, class, we either use cross-sectional graphing paper or a semi-log. In this case, class, ang pinlot ko dito is a semi-log. How did I know na semi-log siya? Because the y-axis contains the logarithmic expression. Okay, remember, class, in a semi-log, the y-axis follows a logarithmic expression, logarithmic scale. Okay, the x-axis, on the other hand, okay, follows a normal scale. Okay, kasi nga, we're talking about time there. Okay, so class, this is the main difference between an intravascular versus an extravascular route of administration in terms of the graph that you create. Okay, following a first-order process at the same time plotted in a semi-log graphing paper. Okay, for an intravascular route, class, or for extravascular route, okay, notice this. The plasma concentration, class, starts at 0 time. And at 0 time, class, the concentration is also 0. Then slowly, tumataas siya until you reach a certain peak. So from this point to this point, class, this is what we call the absorption phase. This is the time wherein the drug is being absorbed from the site of absorption going into the bloodstream. Now, sabi natin, class, hindi naman agad-agad biglaan yung pagtaas niyan. Kaya dahan-dahan yan because of so many factors affecting drug absorption, such as first pass effect, extent of ionization, ano yung transport mechanism na ginagamit ng gamot, and so on and so forth. Is it existing in its ionized or unionized state? So therefore, class, affected doon yung rate. Okay, kung gaano kabilis na-absorb yung drug natin. So this is what we call, class, the absorption phase. Then once the peak concentration is reached, it declines, it starts to decline, it starts to eliminate. Okay? Now, compare that, class, to an intravascular route. In an intravascular route, class, walang absorption phase. Why? Because we give the drug directly into the bloodstream. So at 0 time, the concentration will be at its peak agad. Wala kang absorption phase eh. So automatic, nasa peak na agad yung concentration mo. Unlike that of extravascular route. Okay? So therefore, class, for intravascular route, you will not find an absorption phase. Pag nakakita ka ng absorption phase yan, ibig sabihin, hindi yan intravenously administered. That was administered using a different process. Pwedeng subcutaneous, baka oral, oral, like sublingual, or whatever route. Okay? Basta pag may absorption phase, class, extravascular yan automatically. Okay? Okay. Now, class, for the Cmax, for extravascular route, its maximum concentration is reached after a certain time has lapsed. Unlike that of intravascular, class, at 0 time, the moment you push the plunger, okay, the moment you push the plunger of your syringe, okay, the drug will already reach maximum concentration. Now, I have a question here, class. Right? Oftentimes, okay, ito yung lagi ko tinatanong eh. Is it possible to measure the plasma concentration at 0 time? Okay? So, is it possible? Yan madalas na tinatanong din sa akin eh. Sir, can I get this value? Kasi, class, kung kukunin mo yan, ibig sabihin, pag plunge mo ng syringe, kuha ka agad ng dugo. Tapos papa-analyze mo yung dugo na yun. Posible bang gawin yun? Siyempre, hindi. Imposible yun. That's the reason why, class, when we're doing plotting of intravascular routes, normally, class, nag-start yan here. While on the first hour, ito yan. Ito yung mag-umpisa. Okay? Pwedeng sa first hour or sa second hour, pwedeng after 30 minutes pa. Okay? You don't get blood, class, right after you administer the drug. So, sir, question ngayon, how do I get the concentration at 0 time? Paano ko nakukompute yan? Well, technically, class, paano ko nakukuha yan? Technically, class, there is no way we can determine that experimentally. Right? So what do? We assume the value. How do we assume? We compute. Okay? Kung hindi compute, class, we do. Kung masipag ka mag-plot, we do back extrapolation. What's back extrapolation, class? From here, dito ka nag-umpisa eh. Kukunin mo yung last 3 points. Last 3 plasma concentration time profile na meron ka. Okay? Kukunin mo yung concentration na meron ka, yung last 3. Kuha ka ng ruler. Right? Kuha ka ng ruler. Gawa ka ng straight line, connecting the dots. Okay? Tapos, paabutin mo dito sa connect the dots mo. So, kung halimbawa, ito yung ano. Alright? Ito, kunwari yung plot ko. Okay. Yan. Yan, kunwari itsura nung pinlot ko sa semi-log. Okay, so yung first three, kuha ko ng ruler. Gagawin ko dyan, class, back extrapolate. So, gagawin ko. Yan, connect the dots ko yan. Tapos, class, extend ko yung line ko hanggang sa umabot ako sa y-axis. Kung saan tumama yung line ko, yan na ang concentration ko at time 0. Whatever that is. That's how we assume it. So what else is the difference? Now notice, class, remember the therapeutic window? We have the terms MEC and MTC. MEC would refer to minimum effective concentration. And then, MTC would refer to your minimum toxic concentration. So sabi natin, class, the difference between MTC and MEC is the therapeutic window. So, with the knowledge about the therapeutic window, ang sabi natin, saan dapat lagi ang plasma concentration natin? If we want the drug to create effects. We want the drug to stay within this window. So, kumbaga yung concentration na to, if I want to maintain this, gusto ko nandito lang siya maglalaro. Ayokong bumaba siya dito kasi mawawala ng efficacy. Ayoko namang sumobra siya dito kasi magiging toxic naman siya. Alright? So, I want it to stay within the therapeutic window. Now, between extravascular and intravascular route, okay, ang extravascular route, such as per oral, IM, whatever route, okay, mas extravascular, it takes some time before you reach the MEC. Okay? Before a drug starts to take effect. So, ito yung tinatawag natin na, pag tinrace back ko yan sa x-axis, this will now be my onset time. So, it takes time. Yan yung problem with per oral medications. Unlike that class of intravascular, at 0 time, makikita mo agad ang effect ng gamot. So, pag nagkamali ka ng dose, yung toxicity makikita mo rin agad. Alright? That's why, class, it's very risky to administer medications intravenously. Right? It's risky, but of course, it also provides the fastest response. Okay? Halimbawa, saksakan ka ng pampatulog. Pag saksak yung class, just a few seconds, tulog ka na agad. That's how anesthetics work. Okay? Pero yun din ang risk. So, that's why, class, between the two, IV versus EV, safer ang EV compared sa IV most of the time. Right? So, both of which, class, have elimination phases. Okay? That's something that's common between the two plasma level time curve profile. Okay? Pareho sila may elimination phase. Kasi lahat to, from the maximum concentration, pababa. Na-eliminate na yung gamot. Same here. After reaching a maximum concentration na na-absorb, it's going to eliminate following first order process. Okay? Okay, so here's another class. Here's another representation, specifically for the extravascular route. Okay, so for oral. So again, class, normally at 0 time, 0 din ang concentration dyan. Okay? And sometimes, class, there's an absorption lag time. Anong pwedeng cause ng absorption lag time na to? Ang common culprit dyan, class, is gastric emptying. Because the drug does not immediately go down to the small intestines. So therefore, wala ka talagang makikita ang plasma concentration after the given time. Sabi nga nila, class, sabi nga natin, class, diba? Absorption, okay, majority of the absorption only takes place in the small intestines. So that's the reason why a drug must go into the small intestines prior to absorption for per oral drug. Okay? So nagkakaroon tayo ngayon tuloy ng lag time. Again, ang main culprit dyan, class, would be gastric emptying. Okay? So once the drug is already in the small intestines, then you start to see a rise in plasma concentration. Okay? Starts to rise in the plasma concentration until you reach the maximum, ang pinakamaraming amounts na pwedeng ma-absorb ng katawan natin from that drug. And that maximum amount, class, is known as Cmax. Okay, hanggang dyan na lang ang kayang i-absorb ng katawan. The rest, most likely na-eliminate, underwent first pass effect, okay, and so on and so forth. So from this point to this point, okay, from this point to this point, yung paakyat na yan is known as the absorption phase. Alright? Then of course, the drug, whatever time, okay, kung anong oras natin na-reach ang Cmax, yun yung Tmax. Right? Tmax, the maximum, at the time it took to reach maximum concentration. Right? So class, for IV drugs, it makes things simpler. Ano ang Tmax ko? 0 time. Cmax ko, kailan ko na-reach? At 0 time. Okay? Unlike class, for absorption of drugs following extravascular route, like per oral route, okay, you have to compute for your Tmax pa. Kaya nga class, between the two, intravascular versus extravascular, which one is easier to compute? Intravascular. Kaya nga, that's the reason why, kaya nga, one of its main advantages class is it provides precise dosing. Okay, because it's easy to compute for drugs administered intravascularly. Pero syempre, mas delikado siya. Okay? Okay, what about class half-life? What do we mean when we say half-life? Half-life is simply defined as the time it takes to reduce the original concentration of a drug by half, by 50%. Okay, we'll talk more about this once we reach the topic on half-life. Okay? Now, in relation to a clinical setting class, we say that a drug's concentration, for it to create an effect, must be within the therapeutic range. It needs to stay on the therapeutic range. Okay? So class, the total amount of drug absorbed, okay, in terms of extent, gaano karami, from 0 time to infinite time, whatever time it took, okay, how much of the drug was absorbed totally? Okay, the parameter used for that class would be AUC. Okay, for you to determine how much of the drug was absorbed from the time it touched your lips, okay, down to the time na completely na-excrete siya sa katawan natin. How much was absorbed? From the original 500, gaano karami ang na-absorb every hour? Gaano karami ang na-absorb at na-eliminate, okay, every hour? You can compute for that class using AUC. So that's the pharmacokinetic parameter used to determine the extent of absorption. So the higher the absorption, the higher the AUC class, ang assumption natin is the higher din ang effects. Now this is in relation to the principle that I've been telling you guys, which is about the kinetic homogeneity principle. Okay, na sabi natin, the higher the amount of drug in the bloodstream, we assume that that's the same amount reaching the target sites. Okay, next parameter class is the Cmax. So as I mentioned a while ago, this is the concentration, maximum concentration that can be absorbed from a given dosage form. Okay, following extravascular route. So it simply measures, the Cmax class can measure the intensity of your drug effects. So sabi natin, the higher the Cmax then, the higher will be the response. Tmax, on the other hand, okay, measures the rate of absorption. Right? So kasi class, the faster the Tmax, the shorter the Tmax, ibig sabihin, ang bilis na absorb ng gamot. Kung mas malapad ang Tmax, mas malayo, okay, mas matagal ang Tmax, ibig sabihin, mabagal na absorb ang gamot. Kasi endpoint natin class, titigil ang absorption once na na-reach ang Cmax. Okay? Absorption phase stops once Cmax is reached. Are we clear? Another thing class that you have to remember about Cmax. Cmax is the point at which drug absorption rate of drug absorption is equal to rate of drug elimination. Okay? So at Cmax, at this point, at this specific point, okay, ang sinasabi natin dyan, the rate of drug absorption is equal to drug elimination. Now, please take note, class, during the absorption phase, baka sabihin nyo, puro absorption lang nangyayari dyan. No. Remember what I mentioned in the beginning of our lesson. The ADME process class occurs simultaneously. While a drug is being absorbed, some are distributed, metabolized, excreted at the same time. Nagkataon lang class, that the predominating or the dominating process right now is absorption. Ibig sabihin, yun yung malakas ngayon. Yan yung dominating process. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, class, while drugs are being absorbed here, some drugs are being eliminated, distributed, and so on and so forth. Nagkataon lang, nagdo-dominate yung absorption. Kaya nakikita natin, tumataas yung plasma concentration. Are we clear? Pagdating sa puntong ito, Cmax, this is the point at which the rate of absorption becomes equal to the rate of elimination. So here, in the absorption phase, Ka, okay, is greater than Ke, or rate of elimination. Okay, sa phase na to. Pero pagdating na dito, class, sa elimination phase, pababa na yung plasma concentration natin, sabi natin ngayon dito, Ke, the rate of elimination, is greater now than the rate of absorption. Kaya nakita natin is the decline of the plasma concentration. Are we clear? Hindi lang puro absorption nangyayari dyan. Nagkataon lang na mas dominating mas mabilis yung absorption rate natin during this time compared sa elimination rate. Okay? So class, compare this to an intravascular route, wala tayong Ka because no absorption took place. Okay, so kaya nga sabi na, di ba? IV drugs bypass the absorption phase. Kaya nga between the two class, trust me, mas madaling mag-compute ng IV. Right? Okay. So here are the various kinetic parameters class used to assess the amount of drug reaching the bloodstream, or what we call the bioavailability. We'll have a separate topic class regarding bioavailability, but right now, this is just an intro to that. Okay, so again, Tmax class measures the rate. Cmax, on the other hand, measures the rate and extent. Bakit kasama si rate? Kasi kung nasan si Cmax, andun lagi si Tmax. Just trace it back to the x-axis. So if this is your Cmax, trace it all the way down to your x-axis, kung nasan ang time. Okay? So yun siya. Andiyan lang yung Tmax. Oh, before I forget nga pala class, in a plasma level time curve, baka may sabi ako ng sabi, hindi nyo pala naintindihan yung sinasabi ko. Okay, plasma level time curve, time is always written on the x-axis. Concentration of the drug, the plasma concentration, is always written on the y-axis. That's the reason why class, also the y-axis follows the logarithmic scale. Okay, ito yung sumusunod sa log scale natin. Kaya nga pag nag-plot ka ng semi-log, dito iba-iba yung iba-iba yung divisions, dito pantay-pantay sa x-axis. Because time class just goes on. Hindi naman sumusunod ng logarithmic scale ang time. Linear ang time natin. Okay? So, AUC on the other hand class, basically computes for the total extent. Okay? How much of the drug was absorbed from 0 to infinite time. Okay, so these are the kinetic parameters we need to be aware of. Now, class, we can compute for this individually. The easiest way to get this, of course, would be through plotting. Plot mo lang. Kasi kung nasa yung pinakatuktok, yun na yung Cmax. Trace back sa y-axis, as x-axis, yun na yung Tmax. Okay, pero we can compute for this as well. Okay, for now, class, let's not do that yet. Okay, not yet. Okay. So here's an example, class, of how Cmax and Tmax, okay, how Cmax and Tmax and AUC can vary from drug to drug. Looking at this class, drug A would be the blue one. Okay, drug B versus drug C. Okay, looking at the graph class, ang pinaka na-absorb, okay, the one with the best extent. Okay, the highest extent would be, of course, drug A. Why? Because it has the highest Cmax. Okay, the poorest, of course, would be the low one, would be either drug B and drug C. Mababa sila. So the highest would be drug A. Now, between the two, which one is absorbed the fastest? Okay, the fastest class would be A and B, most likely, because mukhang pantay sila. Kunwari straight tong dinodrawing ko, ha. Kasi mukhang they almost reach the Cmax at the same time. So they have almost similar Tmax. So therefore, class, I can assume that drug A and drug B was absorbed faster compared to drug C. Ang drug C, andito yung kanyang Cmax eh. So therefore, ang Tmax niya is approximately after 3 hours pa. So between the three class, okay, the slowest one to be absorbed was drug C. The slowest one to be absorbed. Okay? So are we clear? Okay. So between drug A and drug B, which one has the best extent or the highest extent? It's drug A because pinakamataas sa kanyang Cmax compared kay drug B. Okay? Okay. So now, class, between the three, which one did not create a response? Okay? Between the three drugs, class, ang hindi nag-create ng response would be drug C for obvious reasons. Why? It hardly went beyond the minimum effective concentration. So meaning, drug C, no effect. Kulang ang no effect because pwedeng underdosed si drug C. So dahil underdose siya, anong gagawin ko ngayon? Tataasan ko ang dose. Gano'ng kataas? Pwede natin i-compute yun.